Get the owner on the phone now!" Serena's scream ripped through the restaurant like a blade. Every diner turned their head. I sat in my corner booth, my coffee half finished, when my daughter-in-law burst into the main dining room. She was on the arm of my son, Marcus, surrounded by a group of stylish friends. Serena wore a blood-red designer dress that screamed luxury and jewelry that glittered under the crystal chandeliers. And then she saw me, her face twisted into a mask of absolute disgust. "What in God's name is this old woman doing here?" The words spilled from her mouth like venom, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. I felt every gaze bore into me. My worn gray cardigan, my comfortable shoes, my hair pulled back in a simple bun. I was the smudge on their perfect night. Marcus rushed over, his face flushed. Not with indignation at how his wife treated me. He was embarrassed of me. "Mom," he hissed through clenched teeth, "what are you doing in a place like this? Look at how you're dressed. My God, this is humiliating." My own son, my only child. The words hit me in the chest, but I held my composure. My hands trembled slightly around the coffee cup, but I didn't say a word. Serena was already snapping her fingers at the waitstaff, her voice rising in pitch. "I need the manager now. This woman does not belong here. This is a high-end establishment, not a shelter. Get her out of here immediately." Murmurs filled the space. Elegant couples at nearby tables watched us, with a mix of morbid curiosity and clear disapproval. Some women looked at me with pity, others with disdain, as if my mere presence contaminated the refined air. Marcus and Serena's friends tried to stifle uncomfortable chuckles. One of them muttered something about people who don't know their place. Marcus leaned closer, his breath hot against my ear. "Mom, please. We're here with important investors. You're going to ruin everything. Can't you just leave? There are cheap diners over in the North End. Go there." Investors. Important people. It was always the same. I was never enough for them. Never stylish enough, modern enough, or valuable enough. Serena continued to gesticulate dramatically, her voice reaching nearly hysterical notes. "This is unacceptable. We pay a fortune to dine in an exclusive atmosphere, and this shows up. Where is the owner? I want to speak to the owner right now." She pointed at me as if I were trash that urgently needed to be removed. Her friends nodded, scandalized, whispering amongst themselves about the nerve of certain people. A young server nervously approached, trying to calm the situation. Serena cut him off before he could speak. "I don't want excuses. I want the manager. I want the owner. Someone needs to answer for this." The poor young man practically ran toward the back offices. Marcus avoided my gaze completely, focused on smiling tightly at his investors, trying to minimize the incident. I remained sitting, feeling as though 66 years of life had been reduced to this moment of absolute humiliation. My own son wanted to erase me from his existence. The seconds dragged like hours. Serena used every moment to fuel the fire. "I just can't believe it, can you? You come to celebrate, to close important deals, and you have to run into this situation. She probably sneaked in without a reservation. Or worse, someone took pity on her and let her in." Her friends laughed, that cruel laughter familiar to women who enjoy stepping on others. One of them added, "Poor dear, she probably saw the place from outside and thought she could pretend to belong here." The laughter grew louder. Then Anthony Tony Davis appeared. The restaurant manager walked toward us with his characteristic calm elegance, impeccable suit, upright posture, a professional smile that revealed nothing. Serena pounced on him immediately. "Finally! I need you to get this woman out of here immediately. She's ruining everyone's experience. Look at how she's dressed. This is embarrassing for your establishment." Tony listened in silence, nodding slightly, his expression completely neutral. Then his eyes settled on me. For a second, something flickered in his gaze, something Serena missed because she was too busy relishing her moment of power. Marcus chimed in, his voice attempting to sound authoritative. "Look, we don't want to make a bigger scene. Just handle it discreetly. Take her out through the kitchen exit if you have to." Through the kitchen, as if I were garbage that didn't even deserve to use the main door. Tony took a deep breath. Then, with a composure that contrasted brutally with Serena's hysteria, he turned completely toward me. His next words dropped like bombs into the expectant silence of the restaurant. "Madam Proprietor, how would you like me to proceed with these patrons?" Proprietor. The word hung in the dense air. I watched Serena's expression freeze, Marcus's eyes widen in confusion, and the murmurs abruptly cease. Tony waited for my answer with absolute respect, his hands clasped in front of him, his posture reverent. I still hadn't moved a muscle, my coffee now cold between my trembling fingers. 66 years old, 5 years widowed, a lifetime spent building something my own children knew nothing about. And there I was, in my restaurant, being treated like an obstacle by the family I gave everything to. The silence that followed was deafening. Proprietor. That word kept echoing in the air like a ringing bell. I saw Serena blinking, her mouth opening and closing without a sound. Marcus had paled by 3 shades, his hand gripping the back of a nearby chair as if he needed physical support. The investors exchanged confused glances. Serena's friends had stopped laughing. Tony still stood by my table, awaiting my instructions, with the loyalty that only comes from years of working together and mutual respect. But I still couldn't speak. I had a knot in my throat the size of a fist. Because this moment, this public humiliation at the hands of my own blood, was simply the culmination of 5 years of accumulated contempt. 5 years ago, when I lost my husband, I also lost my identity in my son's eyes. Robert, or Rob, had been my partner for 42 years. Together, we built everything from scratch. We arrived in the city with nothing but dreams and hands willing to work. He cooked. I managed. Our first restaurant was just a tiny space in a neglected part of the North End. We worked 16 hours a day. Marcus grew up among tables and kitchens, doing homework amidst the aroma of spices and the clatter of dishes. But he never valued that. To him, we were just restaurant people, service staff. Nothing glamorous, nothing to brag about to his private university friends. When Rob died suddenly of a massive heart attack, I was devastated. But I was also left with something Marcus never knew about. A chain of 7 upscale dining establishments spread across the city. What started as that humble neighborhood spot had transformed into a culinary empire valued at several $million. Rob and I had worked in silence, reinvesting every profit, expanding strategically. We never flaunted it. We never lived in mansions. We stayed in our modest home in the North End where we started. We continued to dress simply. The money was in the businesses, in property, in investments, not in appearances. After the funeral, Marcus showed up with Serena. They had been married for 2 years by then, but at the wake was the first time she showed me her true face. While I cried beside my husband's coffin, I heard her whisper to a friend, "Poor Marcus. Now he'll have to carry the old woman. She probably can't even afford to keep herself up." Those words pierced me, but I was too deep in grief to confront her. Marcus said nothing. He didn't defend me or contradict her. He simply nodded with resignation, as if I truly were a burden he now had to endure. The following months were revealing. Marcus only visited when he needed cash. "Mom, I have expenses. The condo, the car. Serena wants to redecorate." I always gave him money, $500 here, $1,000 there. He never asked where the money came from. He assumed it was my husband's savings, a small widow's pension, something small that would eventually run out. I never told him about the restaurants. I don't know why. Maybe I sensed that knowledge would fundamentally change something in our relationship. Maybe I wanted to protect the last thing I had left of Rob. Maybe deep down, I already knew my son didn't love me for who I was, but for what he could get. Serena made everything worse. She came from a family with money, or at least that's what she constantly claimed. Her father had businesses. Her mother organized charity events. Serena had gone to expensive schools and traveled through Europe. To her, I was the embarrassing mother-in-law, the poor widow from the humble neighborhood. At family gatherings, she introduced me with disdain. "This is Eleanor, Marcus's mother. She lives in the old neighborhood where they had their little food business. Little business, as if 40 years of work were meaningless, as if Rob's sweat didn't deserve respect. 2 years ago, my grandson Elias was born, my only grandson. When Serena was pregnant, I knitted blankets, bought clothes, and prepared everything with the joy of a first-time grandmother. The day of the delivery, I waited 12 hours at the hospital. When they finally let me in, Serena looked at me with annoyance. "Only 15 minutes. I'm tired, and we have important visitors coming after this." 15 minutes with my grandson. That was all. In the following weeks, I tried to visit them. I brought homemade food, modest gifts. Serena always had excuses. "We're busy. The baby is sleeping. We have the pediatrician." Better another day. Another day that never came. Marcus stopped returning my calls. Messages went unanswered. I kept insisting because the pain of not seeing my grandson was eating me up inside, until one day, 6 months ago, I showed up at their condo unannounced. I rang the bell repeatedly. Serena opened the door with fury in her eyes. "What part of 'we're busy' don't you understand? That's enough, Eleanor. You're being invasive, desperate, pathetic." The door slammed in my face. I heard Elias crying inside, my grandson, and I was outside like an unwanted stranger. That night, I cried until I ran out of tears. I called Brenda, my lifelong friend. She knew the whole truth. She knew about the restaurants, the properties, everything. "Eleanor," Brenda said firmly, "you have to stop letting this happen. You are a powerful woman. Stop groveling for crumbs of affection." But I couldn't. He was my son, my only family. I kept giving him money when he asked. I kept swallowing my pride every time Serena humiliated me. I kept accepting being invisible because I was afraid of losing them completely, afraid of being absolutely alone in this world. 3 months ago, Marcus called me. First time in weeks. My heart leaped with hope. "Mom, I need to see you." I thought they finally wanted to reconcile. I cooked my best meal. I tidied the house. He arrived alone, without Serena, without Elias. He sat in my small living room, looking around with that air of superiority he had perfected. "Mom, I need $5,000. It's urgent. I have investments." I looked at him, really looked, for the first time in months. My son, 38 years old, wearing an expensive suit and a watch that cost more than my car, coming to ask his poor mother for money. "Investments?" I asked softly. "Yeah, business stuff. You wouldn't understand. Just tell me if you have it or not." I gave him the money, taken from the personal account where I kept cash for daily expenses. He took the envelope, didn't even count it, and left without even drinking the coffee I had made him, without asking how I was, without a hug, without anything. That night, Brenda called me, agitated. "Eleanor, you need to know something. My niece works in PR. She saw Marcus and Serena at a corporate event. They're bragging that they're opening their own luxury restaurant, that they have investors, that it will be the most exclusive spot in the city." My blood ran cold. My money, my years of silent help, all to finance a dream that completely excluded me. A restaurant that would compete with mine, built with my own money, without them even knowing I was their competition. That's when I decided something. I wasn't going to say anything yet. I was going to watch. I was going to see how far their contempt would go, how far they were willing to sink me before I revealed the truth. I continued my simple life, visiting my restaurants discreetly, meeting with Tony and my other managers in private offices. I kept wearing my modest clothes, living in my humble home, but inside, something had changed. The pain was transforming into something colder, harder, more final. And then came this evening, this dinner that was supposed to be quiet, this moment where my own family dragged me through the dirt in front of strangers. Tony's question still hung in the air, awaiting my answer. I slowly raised my gaze to Tony. I saw the genuine concern in his eyes, the loyalty from years of working together, but I saw something else too. He was waiting for me to finally defend myself, to set boundaries, to stop letting them walk all over me. My voice came out weaker than I would have liked. "Tony, please. Let them finish their dinner in peace. I was just leaving anyway." I stood up, my legs trembling slightly. I took my worn handbag, avoiding everyone's eyes. Tony frowned, clearly disappointed by my answer, but he nodded with professionalism. I walked past Marcus without looking at him, past Serena, who now looked confused and vaguely triumphant all at once. I left the restaurant with my head down, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes pinned on my back. Outside, the cold night air hit my face, and then, finally, the tears came. It wasn't the first time they had humiliated me. Heaven knows it wasn't. This was simply the drop that spilled over a cup that had been silently filling up for years. I remembered that Christmas. 18 months ago, Serena hosted a family dinner at their condo. She invited me, but with conditions. "Eleanor, please try to look presentable. Marcus's parents, my family will be here too. We don't want them to think we are, well, you know." She didn't want them to think what? That her husband came from working people? That her mother-in-law didn't wear designer clothes? I arrived at that dinner wearing a green sweater I had bought especially for the occasion. It wasn't expensive, but it was new and fit me well. I carried a cake I had baked myself, my grandmother's recipe. I knocked on the door with my heart full of hope. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe we could be a real family. Serena opened it. She looked me up and down, and her smile tightened. "Oh, you came," as if my presence were an unpleasant surprise when she had invited me herself. She let me in, but not to the main dining room where everyone was. She took me to the kitchen. "Can you leave the cake here? You better wait a moment before coming out. Not everyone has arrived yet." I stood in that kitchen like an employee waiting for orders. I heard the laughter from the dining room, the animated conversations. Serena's parents had arrived, her sister, close friends. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Finally, I walked out on my own. When I entered the dining room, the conversation abruptly stopped. Serena practically jumped out of her chair. "Eleanor, so glad you came out. Look, I'll introduce you to everyone." She did so with that fake smile I knew so well. "This is Marcus's mother. She lives on the North End. She has a very cozy little house." Cozy little house. Code for insignificant poor person. Serena's mother, a woman with too much Botox and excessive jewelry, looked at me the way one looks at an insect. "Oh, how quaint. And what did your husband do?" Past tense, as if Rob didn't even deserve to be remembered. "We had restaurants," I said simply. Serena quickly interrupted. "A small restaurant, you know, comfort food. Nothing fancy, it's not around anymore." A lie. She didn't know anything, but she made me seem even more insignificant. The rest of the dinner was torture. They sat me at the end of the table, as far as possible from the center of attention. No one spoke to me. When I tried to contribute to a conversation, Serena abruptly changed the subject. My cake never left the kitchen. At dessert time, she served one bought from an expensive bakery, presenting it as if it were the only dessert of the night. When I said goodbye, Marcus didn't even get out of his chair. "Bye, Mom. Drive safe." That was all. I got home and threw my cake in the trash. I cried over the sink, wondering when I had lost my son, when I had become an embarrassing obstacle instead of the mother who gave him everything. That night, I called Brenda, sobbing. She came to my house, hugged me, and let me cry on her shoulder. "Eleanor, that's enough. You have to stop them. How long are you going to allow this?" But I couldn't. I clung to the hope that they would change, that one day Marcus would remember who raised him, who loved him unconditionally. Then came Elias's birthday. My grandson turned 1 year old. Serena posted photos on social media of an elaborate party, themed decorations, a professional dessert table, entertainers, dozens of guests. I wasn't invited. I didn't even know about the party until I saw the photos online. My grandson, blowing out his first candle, surrounded by strangers, and I, his grandmother, was completely excluded. I sent Marcus a message. "I saw the photos from Elias's birthday. He looked beautiful. I wish I could have been there." His reply arrived 3 hours later. "It was a small party, Mom. Just close family." Close family. I wasn't close family. Those words broke something inside me that couldn't be repaired. 2 weeks later, they showed up at my house unannounced. It was Saturday morning. I was in my pajamas, my house untidy. I opened the door in surprise. Marcus walked in without greeting me, looking around with disapproval. "Mom, we need to talk about something important." Serena followed him, carrying Elias. My heart skipped a beat when I saw my grandson. I instinctively reached out my arms. Serena moved away, shielding the baby as if I were dangerous. "He's tired." They sat on my old sofa. Marcus went straight to the point. "Mom, Serena and I have been talking. We need you to understand something. We have busy lives, responsibilities, a son. We can't be constantly worrying about you." Worrying, as if they ever had. "I don't understand," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Serena sighed dramatically. "Eleanor, you're older. You live alone. Eventually, you're going to need help, care. We want to make it clear that we can't be responsible for that. You should start looking into assisted living, places with people your age and professionals to look after you." They were planning my placement in a nursing home. I was 64 at the time. I was perfectly healthy, active, but to them, I was already a future problem they wanted to solve in advance. "I'm fine," I managed to say. "I don't need help." Marcus shook his head. "Mom, be realistic. This house is falling apart. Your car is 15 years old. You barely have enough to live on. We can't keep subsidizing you forever." Subsidizing me. I, who had given him thousands of dollars over the years. I, who had more money than he would ever have. But I remained silent. I kept protecting my secret as if it were the only dignity I had left. Serena added with false sweetness, "Besides, when you pass on, we have to think about practical things. This house, your belongings. We don't want Marcus to have to deal with a legal mess." They were planning my death, discussing my inheritance in front of me as if I were already a ghost. "In fact," Serena continued, "it would be good if you gave us a copy of your will to keep everything in order, just to avoid surprises." Marcus nodded. "It's logical, Mom. We're your only family. Elias is your only grandson. Everything you have will eventually be ours anyway. It's better to have it clear now." I looked at both of them, my son with his expression of impatience, my daughter-in-law with her calculated smile, my grandson who didn't know who I was, and something inside me hardened permanently. "I'll think about it," I finally said. Marcus frowned. "There's not much to think about, Mom." But he didn't insist. They left quickly, leaving me in my house with a silence that weighed like lead. That afternoon, I called my lawyer. "I need to update my will, and I want it to be absolutely airtight." Over the following weeks, I restructured everything: my restaurants, my properties, my bank accounts. I created trusts for loyal employees. I designated donations to charitable organizations. For Marcus, I decided to leave him exactly what he thought I had: my modest house and $10,000 in a savings account. The rest, the millions he knew nothing about, would go to people who truly valued what Rob and I built. But I still didn't tell him anything. I still hoped, in some foolish corner of my heart, that he would wake up, that he would remember, that he would go back to being the boy who hugged me and said, "I love you, Mom." I kept answering when he called, asking for money. I kept swallowing the humiliations. I continued to be the invisible mother he needed only when it was convenient for him. Until tonight. Until he tried to kick me out of my own restaurant like I was dirt. I walked to my car parked 2 blocks down, the same old car Marcus criticized. Tears blurred my vision. My phone rang. It was Brenda. "Where are you?" "Tony called me. He told me everything." Her voice trembled with fury. "Eleanor, stop. Stop protecting them. Stop hiding. It's time for them to know who you really are." "I can't," I told Brenda, my voice breaking. "They're my family. He's my son." I heard her sigh of frustration on the other end of the line. "Eleanor, listen to me closely. Family doesn't treat you like this. Family doesn't humiliate you publicly. Family doesn't use you like an ATM while spitting in your face." She was right. I knew it. But a mother's heart doesn't understand logic. "Give me time," I pleaded. "Just give me a little more time." Brenda was silent for a long moment. Then, in a softer voice, she said, "Okay, but promise me that when the time comes to defend yourself, you will. Promise me you won't let them destroy you." I promised her, although I didn't know if I could keep it. I drove home with silent tears rolling down my cheeks, feeling that every mile was taking me not only away from the restaurant, but from the last vestiges of hope I had left. The following days were strange. Marcus didn't call to apologize, to explain, or even to ask for more money. Nothing. It was as if that night at the restaurant had never happened, as if publicly throwing me out was so normal it didn't even warrant a follow-up conversation. I continued my routine, discreetly visiting my other restaurants, reviewing financial reports, meeting with managers in private offices where no one saw me. On the outside, I was still Eleanor, the simple widow. On the inside, I felt like a building with increasingly deep cracks about to collapse. One afternoon, 2 weeks after the incident, Brenda came to my house with information. She sat across from me in my small living room, her face grim. "You need to know something. My niece, the one in PR, told me more details." My stomach tightened. Marcus and Serena are in serious, major financial trouble. I leaned forward, my heart racing. "What kind of trouble?" Brenda pulled out her phone, showing me screenshots. They've accumulated over $200,000 in debt, maxed out credit cards, personal loans, all to maintain that lifestyle they show off on social media. $200,000. The figure hit me like a punch. "How is that possible?" Brenda continued, her voice hard. "European trips they post on Instagram. That exclusive condo in Midtown that costs $4,000 a month in rent. Marcus's sports car, Serena's designer clothes, the elaborate parties. It's all a front, Eleanor. It's all debt. They are broke." I leaned back on the sofa, processing the information. All this time, while they treated me like a beggar, they were sinking financially. All that arrogance, that contempt, was built on a mountain of lies and credit. "There's more," Brenda added, and her tone grew even darker. "The restaurant plan is real, but they have no capital. They are desperate to get investors." That's why they were at my restaurant that day with those people. They were potential investors Serena was trying to impress. Everything made sense now. The exaggerated hysteria, the need to expel me. I ruined their carefully constructed image of a sophisticated, successful couple. A poor mother-in-law didn't fit the narrative they were selling. But here's the worst part. Brenda hesitated, as if the next words pained her to say. "My niece overheard Serena talking to a friend. She said that when you died, they were going to sell your house immediately, that with that money they could pay off some debt and maybe get the down payment for the restaurant." My house. The house where I lived with Rob for 40 years, where we raised Marcus, where every corner held memories of a life of love and work. To them, it was just an impending business transaction. They were just waiting for me to die so they could cash in. Serena had said the exact words, "Hopefully she hurries up. That house is in an area that's appreciating. We could easily get $300,000. Brenda took my hand, her eyes full of tears. "Eleanor, they are speculating on your death, planning your funeral before you're even sick." I stood up, walked to the window, and looked at my small garden where Rob used to plant tomatoes. 66 years old. Statistically, I had perhaps 15 or 20 more years of life left, but to my son, that was too long to wait. I was more valuable dead than alive. "What are you going to do?" Brenda asked softly. I turned toward her, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something different from pain. I felt determination. "I'm going to watch. I'm going to see exactly how far they are capable of going, and when the right time comes, I'm going to teach them a lesson they will never forget." The following weeks were revealing. I discreetly hired a private investigator, not because I wanted to spy on my son, but because I needed to know the whole truth. The reports arrived weekly, each one more disturbing than the last. Marcus had lied on multiple loan applications, inflating his income. Serena had pawned jewelry that she later reported as stolen to collect the insurance. They had borrowed money from friends with promises of investment returns they never intended to keep. The list of people defrauded or deceived by them grew constantly, but what hurt me the most was discovering something about Elias. My grandson was being used. Serena took him to charity events, took photos with him, and posted them with emotional messages about giving to those less fortunate. Then she received donations from followers who thought she was genuinely helping charitable organizations. The money went directly into her personal account. She was using the innocence of her own son as a tool for emotional fraud. That information changed something fundamental in me. It was no longer just about me. It was about justice. It was about stopping two people who clearly had no moral limits. I began to move quietly. First, I spoke with my lawyers about fully protecting my assets. Then I discreetly began to investigate the supposed investors Marcus and Serena were courting. It turned out some were decent people being deceived with false financial projections and impossible promises. I considered contacting them, warning them, but Brenda stopped me. Not yet. You need the perfect moment, the moment where the impact is maximum. Meanwhile, Marcus finally called me. 3 weeks had passed since the restaurant incident. His voice sounded strained. "Mom, I need to talk to you. It's urgent." My heart, that foolish organ that still wanted to believe in miracles, skipped a beat. "Are you and Elias okay?" There was a pause. "Yeah, we're fine. I just need to see you. Can I come by tomorrow?" I accepted, of course. I cooked his favorite meal. I cleaned the house. A part of me still hoped he would come to apologize, to acknowledge what he had done, to say those magic words, "I'm sorry, Mom." He arrived punctually, but alone. No Serena, no Elias. He sat in the same spot where he had told me weeks earlier that I was a burden. This time his body language was different, nervous, restless. "Mom, I need your help." "No, how are you?" No apology for the restaurant, just, "I need." "What's wrong, son?" He rubbed his face, a gesture of stress. "I have temporary liquidity problems, about $500,000. It's for an investment opportunity I can't pass up. I'll pay you back in 3 months with interest if you want." 3 times more than he had ever asked for. $500,000 is a lot of money, Marcus. He leaned forward, his voice acquiring that manipulative tone I now recognized too well. "Mom, it's a unique opportunity. I'm going to triple that investment. I could finally give you a better life, get you out of this house, move you somewhere more comfortable." Move me, as if I were a package that needed to be relocated. "And if I don't have that amount?" His expression hardened. "Mom, I know you have savings." Dad was cautious. "There must be something. You can take out a loan against the house if you have to." Against my house. He wanted me to mortgage my home to give him money he would never return. "Let me think about it," I finally said. His face contorted in frustration. "There's no time to think. I need the money this week. 3 days maximum." He stood up, pacing the room like a caged animal. "You always do this. You always complicate things. Just tell me yes. It's simple." I really looked at him. My son, the baby I breastfed, the child I nursed when he was sick, the teenager whose dreams I supported unconditionally, and I found nothing of that child in the man in front of me. "I need to think about it," I repeated, firmer this time. He exploded. "For God's sake, Mom, what do you have to think about? I'm your son, your only family. Don't you trust me?" The irony was so brutal I almost laughed. "I'll give you an answer in 3 days," I said, with a calm I didn't feel. He scoffed, grabbed his jacket. "Fine, but don't make me beg. I don't have time for drama." He slammed the door shut. I remained sitting in my empty living room, the food I had prepared untouched in the kitchen, and I made a decision. It was time to stop being a victim. It was time for Marcus and Serena to face the consequences of their actions. I called Tony. I need your help organizing something that will change everything. His response was immediate. Whatever you need, Mrs. Johnson, whatever it is. The plan began to take shape, and this time I wasn't backing down. Over the next 3 days, I worked in silence. Tony and I met in the administrative office of my flagship restaurant, the one Rob and I had designed together 20 years ago. It was our pride, the most elegant in the entire chain. Glass walls with a view of the city skyline, a cutting-edge kitchen, a wine list that competed with the best European establishments, and absolutely no one in my family knew it was mine. Mrs. Johnson, Tony said, sitting across from me with a folder full of documents, I need you to explain exactly what you want to achieve, because I can arrange anything you ask, but I need to understand the final goal. I leaned back in the leather chair, the same one Rob used to sit in to review menus and accounts. I want Marcus and Serena to see who I truly am, but not privately. I need it to be public, irreversible. I need the blow to be so strong that they can't deny it or minimize it afterward. Tony nodded slowly. Are you sure? Once your identity is revealed, everything will change. Not just with them, but with your whole life. I thought for a moment. My quiet life, my comfortable anonymity, all of that would disappear. But what was the point of that tranquility if it came with constant humiliation? I'm sure, I said finally. It's time for my son to learn that respect is not optional. Tony opened the folder, showing me calendars and lists. According to my contacts, Marcus and Serena have scheduled a crucial dinner for this Friday. They are bringing their potential investors here, to this restaurant specifically. It's their last chance to get the capital they need. If they don't succeed, their restaurant plan collapses. Perfect. It was almost too perfect. How did you get that information? Tony smiled slightly. Serena made the reservation 2 weeks ago for 8 people. She requested the main table, the one in the center of the room. She wants everyone to see their meeting. She wants to stage a spectacle of success. Of course she does. Everything with Serena was a performance. Everything was a facade. Then, here's my plan, I said, leaning forward. I'm going to be here that night, at my usual corner table, dressed as always, simple, invisible. I'm going to let everything unfold naturally. Tony frowned. And if they try to kick you out again? If what happened 3 weeks ago repeats itself? I smiled, and it was a smile that held no warmth. I hope they try to kick me out in front of their investors. I hope they humiliate me one more time. And then, only then, you will reveal exactly who I am, but not with simple words. I want you to bring the deeds, the business registrations, the property documents. I want physical evidence they cannot refute. Tony looked at me with a mix of admiration and concern. Mrs. Johnson, this is going to destroy them, especially in front of people they are trying to do business with. I felt a twinge of pain in my chest. A mother, after all, but I clenched it, putting it deep inside. They destroyed me first. Every day, with every slight, with every humiliation, they destroyed me slowly, thinking I was too weak or too foolish to notice. It is time for them to face real consequences. We spent the next few hours refining every detail. Tony would discreetly contact some of the investors, not to reveal anything, but to ensure they actually attended. I would coordinate with my lawyers to have certified copies of all relevant documents. On Wednesday, Marcus called again. His voice sounded desperate. Mom, the 3 days are up. Do you have the money? I took a deep breath. No, Marcus. I am not giving you $500,000. Silence. Then his voice became dangerously low. You're telling me no? It was the first time in my life I had directly denied him money. That's right. I cannot give you that amount. I heard his quickened breath. You can't or you won't. There's a difference. His tone was accusatory, furious. Mom, I've asked very little of you over the years. I've never demanded anything, and the one time I really need something important, you turn your back on me. Very little. Years of thousands of dollars in loans he never repaid. Years of being his personal piggy bank, and he called it very little. "My decision is final," Marcus exploded. "This is unbelievable. You're my mother. You're supposed to support me, but it's always been like this. Selfish, thinking only of yourself. Dad was the generous one. You just hoard and accumulate like a miser." Miser. I, who had given him every dime he asked for. I, who would have given my life for him without hesitation. "I'm sorry you see it that way," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "Marcus, if you genuinely need help, we can talk about other options. I can help you budget, consolidate debt." "I don't need your poor people's advice," he interrupted venomously. "I needed that money, and you failed me, as always." The line cut off. I stood there with the phone in my hand, feeling the last threads of hope break completely. I called Brenda. My voice was barely a whisper.